everyone, Emma here from So Much Geek Gaming. I wanted to take a look at our favourite dwarven rogue from Dragon Age, Varric Tethras. For those who are new to the franchise, who have seen the Veilguard gameplay trailer and want to play the game when it comes out, you may not know that the dwarf featured in the trailer is a major character from the previous two games and who also features in some of the comics. If you don't have any plans to play the previous Dragon Age games before the Veilguard comes out, stay tuned to get a brief history of Varric's life and to get an idea of who he is and the part he has already played in the vast Dragon Age universe. If you already live and breathe Dragon Age, this video may serve as a refresher before the Veilguard comes out sometime this autumn. This video will contain spoilers up to the recent gameplay trailer for the Veilguard, so if you do plan on playing the previous games before it comes out, please turn away now. I'd hate for this video to spoil your fun. So, who is Varric Tethras? To answer that question, we have to go back to Dragon Age 2. Varric appears at the very beginning of the game, where he is being questioned by Seeker Cassandra Pendergast about certain events that we have yet to see. Varric, not only a rogue, is a storyteller. He writes stories in his spare time, many of which are often embellished, and Dragon Age 2 is essentially his retelling of Hawke's story. Going back to the beginning of Hawke's story in Dragon Age 2, this takes place not long after the events in Dragon Age Origins. Hawke's home of Lovering is overtaken by Darkspawn after the 5th Blight, and they are fleeing to somewhere safe. The Blight, Darkspawn, and all that comes with it is a much needed video in itself, so I won't go over it too much here, but needless to say, the shit has hit the fan and Hawke and their family need a new place to live. Hawke's mother suggests going to Kirkwall, where her brother Gamlen holds the family estate, but upon their arrival they discover he has gambled the estate away, along with the family fortune, and they are not permitted to enter the city. Gamlen gives Hawke some contacts that will allow them into the city, as long as Hawke works for them over the course of a year. During Hawke's time in Kirkwall, they meet Varric Tethras. Varric was born and raised in Kirkwall, but his family all hail from Orzammar. Orzammar is an underground metropolis and is one of the two remaining dwarven kingdoms in Phaedas. Varric's family was once part of the noble caste in Orzammar, until Varric's father, Andvar, was caught fixing provings. Provings are duels between dwarves and are used to settle debates and honour challenges that couldn't be settled otherwise. The dwarves believe that a fighter who wins a proving also has the approval of the dwarven ancestors, whom all dwarves revere. Because of Andvar's actions, the family had to leave for the surface, which led them to Kirkwall. Varric didn't have an easy life. His mother, Lady Ilar, turned to alcohol and smoking after the shame of being exiled from her home, and it was Varric who took care of her. He made sure nobody knew of her addictions and struggles, and looked after her when she fell ill. Varric has an older brother, Bertrand, who was born in Orzammar. Whilst Varric was taking care of their mother, Bertrand was building the family's wealth, and he became a part of the Dwarven Merchants Guild. Bertrand becomes very wealthy, but with that came an unhealthy addiction to coin. When Hawke meets Varric, Varric persuades them to become a business partner in an expedition to loot an abandoned thaig in the Deep Roads, led by him and Bertrand. The Deep Roads once belonged to the Dwarven Empire and are enormous underground tunnels that link all of the Dwarven thaigs together. On their expedition, they arrive at the abandoned thaig, and they find a priceless idol made of an unknown type of lyrium. Bertrand, intent on keeping the idol for himself, betrays Varric and Hawke and seals them in the thaig with no escape. Spoilers, they obviously escape, but they don't see Bertrand again for 3 years. During this time, Varric and Hawke become very close friends and are always there to watch each other's back. Hawk suffers a lot of tragedy throughout Dragon Age 2, and Varric is always there for them. When Bartrand returns to Kirkwall, he has gone insane from exposure to the lyrium idol. As this is a Dragon Age game where you can influence the story and make crucial decisions along the way, there are various ways to deal with Bartrand. Varric wants to kill him, but Hawk is able to influence his final choice. If Hawk permits Varric to kill Bartrand, he will shoot his brother with his crossbow, Bianca. Yup, he has given his crossbow a name, but more on that later. If Hawk persuades Varric not to kill Bartrand, Varric will place him in a Chantry sanitarium. I have mentioned lyrium a few times now, so I shall give a brief description of what it is and its importance. Lyrium is a valuable mineral that forms beneath the surface, but it can be very dangerous if not refined correctly. Dwarven miners are the only group capable of mining and refining the lyrium safely. When refined, the lyrium becomes a smooth silver-like liquid. Because of the dwarves' close proximity to the lyrium, they are naturally resistant to its effects, although this does not mean they are completely immune. The idol that Bartrand kept for himself contains red lyrium. This lyrium had never been discovered by dwarves before, and was an unknown quantity. However, we now know that it's capable of thinning the veil, which in turn allows demons to interact with the physical world. Needless to say, red lyrium is bad and should not be messed with. Even though Bartrand was addicted to making coin, the exposure to the red lyrium when he first found the idol influenced his betrayal of Varric and Hawk. This doesn't excuse it by any means, but it certainly explains it. During Bartrand's return to Kirkwall, he tells Varric he sold the idol to someone he describes as glittering like the sun, but her heart was cold as ice. He never revealed her name, but we will find out soon enough who she was. Another 3 years pass in the game, and it is discovered that Bartrand had left a piece of the lyrium idol in Varric's estate, which caused the veil to tear and attract evil spirits. Varric, having found the piece of red lyrium, starts to feel the same symptoms Bartrand felt after his exposure to the idol. Fortunately, the symptoms are short-lived, and Hawk is given the option to let Varric keep the piece of lyrium or destroy it. If Varric keeps the piece, he uses it to upgrade Bianca, and he promises to be careful with it. When we reach the end of the game, we find out that Bartrand's buyer of the idol is Knight Commander Meredith. She used the idol to reshape her sword, which has driven her completely insane, but it has also given her unnatural powers. There is one more thing I have to discuss that plays a big part in the overall end of Dragon Age 2, and that is one of Hawk's other companions throughout the game, Anders. Anders is a human mage who also happens to be a Grey Warden, first introduced in the Dragon Age Origins DLC, Awakening. Oh, and he is also a human host to a benevolent spirit of the Fade, who embodies the concept of justice. There is a lot going on with him, which I won't explain in too much detail as this is a video about Varric after all, but Anders, over the course of the game, makes a catastrophic decision to blow up the Chantry, killing the Grand Cleric Elfina and everyone inside. Knight Commander Meredith invokes the Rite of Annulment in retaliation for the obliteration of the Chantry and the death of the Grand Cleric. The Rite of Annulment is the Grand Cleric's right to have a circle of magi purged of mages entirely, if they consider it irredeemable. Needless to say, this leads to a final showdown with Meredith, during which Meredith overuses her lyrium sword, causing it to burst into dust and petrify her into a statue. After these events, Varric left Kirkwall with Hawk, but later returned by himself. Seeker Cassandra Pendergast travels to Kirkwall to question him about what happened, and to find out the location of Hawk. Varric, being the best friend anyone could ask for, doesn't give up Hawk's location to Cassandra. He feels they've had enough shit to deal with over the years and they deserve some peace. After the events that took place in Kirkwall, Varric is featured in 3 comic book series: The Silent Grove, Those Who Speak, and Until We Sleep. I won't go into too much detail about the comics, but if you're interested in reading them, I will leave a link in the description to where you can find them. Please note these will be affiliate links, and we will get a small commission on anything you buy through it. This helps the channel a lot and is very much appreciated. Thank you. Now this brings us to the next game in the series, Dragon Age Inquisition. This takes place 1 year after the events of Dragon Age 2, and at the beginning of the game there is an explosion at the Temple of Sacred Ashes, which not only kills Divine Justinia the Fifth and everyone inside, but also causes the Breach. The Breach is a massive tear in the veil that allows hordes of demons to escape from the Fade into the living world. Your player character starts the game as the main suspect of the explosion and is being held in a dungeon in Haven. Not only are you the only survivor of the blast, but you seem to hold a strange magical mark on your hand, the Anchor, which appears to be connected to the Breach. Cassandra Pendergast, the Seeker who was questioning Varric throughout Dragon Age 2, asks you to accompany her to try and close the Breach with this Anchor. On the way there, your character meets Varric. It turns out Varric is there because Cassandra had asked him to meet with Divine Justinia the Fifth to give her more information about Hawke. As there was now a hole in the sky and Divine Justinia the Fifth was dead, Varric no longer needed to be there and could leave if he so wished. However, Varric isn't the type of dwarf to sit back whilst the world was going to shit, so he sticks around to help out. It's during this time that Cassandra and Spy Master Leliana decide to reform the Inquisition. The First Inquisition was set up after the First Blight to defend Phaedus from the dangers of magic and heretics. When they allied with the Chantry, it dissolved and was split into 2 factions, the Seekers of Truth and the Templar Order. With Phaedus now falling into chaos with the Breach, it was time to reform the Inquisition and make it independent of Chantry authority. The Chantry denounced the Inquisition and branded them heretics for harbouring our player character, the only survivor and suspect of the explosion at the Conclave. During your first conversations with Varric, you can ask him about Hawke. There is a website called the Dragon Age Keep, where you can create a world state of your decisions in the previous 2 games, then load them into Dragon Age Inquisition, so depending on the state of your world, Varric will answer some of these questions very differently. It's a nice touch that the Dragon Age games have that make it feel like your decisions matter. In the Veilguard, they will no longer be using the Dragon Age Keep. However, you will be able to answer questions about your decisions in Inquisition, so the world will still feel like it's yours. Going back to your conversations with Varric, you also have the opportunity to ask him why he named his crossbow Bianca. He tells you it's the only story he will never tell. You do meet a female dwarven acquaintance of his later in the game though, who also happens to be called Bianca. But more on that later. During the first part of the game, you discover who is responsible for the explosion at the Temple of Sacred Ashes. During the Conclave, proceedings were interrupted by the arrival of the Elder One, also known as Corypheus, who attempted to perform a ritual using an ancient orb and using Divine Justinia as a sacrifice. However, the ritual was disrupted by your player character, who is now known as the Herald of Andraste. During the ritual, your player character unwillingly enters the Fade, but is guided out by the spirit of Divine Justinia. On learning this, people began to name your player character the Herald of Andraste, essentially claiming you were sent by the Maker to help in their time of need. It was during this ritual that your player character ends up with the anchor on their hand, and it explains how they're able to close the smaller rifts that have appeared throughout the world. Corypheus arrives at Haven with an army of followers intent on killing the herald of Andraste. It seems the anchor on your hand was intended for him as a way for him to enter and leave the Fade at will, and you gaining the anchor for yourself has left a sour taste in his mouth. He believes that killing you will allow him to take the anchor for himself. During the attack there are many casualties, but most people manage to escape and set up camp within the snowy landscape. The herald is the last to escape after a confrontation with Corypheus and makes it to the camp not long before passing out. I don't want to delve too much into Corypheus in this video, as it is all about Varric after all, but some of his history is tied to that of Hawk. I'll try to keep this brief. Corypheus was once one of the 7 high priests of the old gods, a human magister from Tevinter. As he strived for power, the 7 high priests schemed against each other to be raised to godhood, as promised to them by the most powerful of the old gods, Duma. One thing leads to another, and Corypheus ends up imprisoned in the deep roads by the Grey Wardens. It eventually becomes clear that none of the Grey Wardens could be in his presence without him influencing them. The seals keeping Corypheus imprisoned began to weaken, and Warden Commander Larius approached an apostate named Malcolm Hawk, Hawk's father, and forces him to use blood magic to strengthen the seals of the prison. In the Legacy DLC of Dragon Age 2, it is revealed that Corypheus has been using the calling that the Grey Wardens experience to plant thoughts in some of their heads as a way of freeing himself. One of the Wardens, Janeka, lures Hawk to the prison as only their blood can break the seals and free him. When the final seal is broken, Corypheus appears confused, but his ramblings reveal he had entered the Golden City and returned as a Darkspawn. Hawk and their companions have a difficult fight with him, but they are successful in killing him, or so they thought. After camping out in the snow, one of your other companions, Solus, tells your player character of a place where they can go to set up a new base of operations, and after a day or so of scouting, you finally reach Skyhold. Once there, your character is acknowledged for all the help they have given throughout this whole ordeal, and they are anointed the Inquisitor, the leader of the Inquisition, which you have effectively been leading all along. Going back to Varric and his dealings with Corypheus, he is obviously confused because he thought he and Hawk had defeated him, but he tells the Inquisitor that he can set up a meeting with someone who might be able to help. That someone is Hawk. Cassandra is obviously pissed off with Varric. After all, he has kept their location a secret from her. But Varric wanted what was best for Hawk, to keep them far away from the shit show that is happening before them. When the Inquisitor meets Hawk, Hawk explains that they have been investigating Red Lyrium and its connection to the Grey Wardens that seem to have disappeared. When Corypheus appeared at Haven, Varric decided to contact Hawk to see if there was a connection to their investigation. Hawk has a Grey Warden contact who has gone into hiding through fear of corruption in the Grey Warden's ranks. Depending on your decision from the very first game, who that contact is can be one of 3 people. One of those people is Alistair, who canonically is king, but your decisions in Dragon Age Origins can lead him down a very different path. You can make him king, have him executed, or even make decisions that lead to him being a drunk. But you can also have him remain with the Grey Wardens, and if you do so, Alistair will be Hawk's contact in Inquisition. If it isn't Alistair that turns up, it'll either be Loghain or Stroud. Loghain betrayed King Kaelin during the 5th Blight, leaving him and countless others to die at the hands of Darkspawn. Again, your choices on his fate in Dragon Age Origins will be the deciding factor on whether or not he is Hawk's contact. You can kill him for his betrayal, or conscript him into the Grey Wardens. If neither Alistair or Loghain fit the requirements to be Hawk's contact, that will leave us with Stroud. Stroud appears briefly in Dragon Age 2, and helps one of Hawk's siblings to become a Grey Warden. I mention these three options as this becomes important later on. The Inquisitor meets with Hawk and their Grey Warden contact, and they investigate an ancient Tevinter ritual tower in the western approach, where they discover Grey Warden mages sacrificing their fellow Wardens to summon demons. This was a ritual led by Lord Livius Erimond, a Venatori Magister, and it will enslave the Grey Wardens to Corypheus, who will use them and their army of demons to conquer Theodos. Before they could stop Erimond, he escapes to Adamant Fortress. They later lay siege to Adamant Fortress in the hopes of stopping Erimond and to warn the other Grey Wardens of the ritual. The party end up being attacked by Corypheus's dragon, and when the ground beneath them begins to fall, the Inquisitor uses the anchor to take their party into the Fade. There are a lot of demons in here, and they try to navigate a way out whilst dealing with their own nightmares. Fortunately, Divine Justinia, or the Spirit of no less, is able to guide them to a way out. Unfortunately, there is a nightmare blocking their path, and the Inquisitor has to choose someone to stay behind to serve as a distraction whilst the rest of them escape. The Inquisitor has to choose to leave either Hawk or their Grey Warden contact in the Fade. This can be a tough decision depending on who the Grey Warden contact is. If it's Loghain or Stroud, it's a lot easier to leave them in the Fade. Loghain was a traitor, and Stroud hasn't been in the game long enough to have much of a connection with. But if the Grey Warden contact is Alistair, the choice is quite difficult. Who do you choose between a faithful companion in Dragon Age Origins and your player character in Dragon Age 2? If you haven't played either game, this decision may not seem very significant, but to someone who has played both games, they would find this decision the hardest to make in the game. And whilst the Inquisitor has no real connection to either of these people, you do, and of course Varric does too. Varric obviously has a deep connection to Hawk after so many years of friendship and going through hard times together, but he also helped Alistair in one of the comic book series. If you decide to leave Hawk in the Fade, Varric is absolutely heartbroken. He is not only sad about losing his best friend, but he is wrecked with guilt as he blames himself for dragging Hawk into this mess. He remains with the Inquisition though, as he wants to help stop Corypheus once and for all. Now let's get back to Bianca. Not the crossbow, but the actual real-life dwarf called Bianca. At Skyhold, the Inquisitor sees Varric talking to Bianca, and she explains she may have a lead on Corypheus's source of red lyrium. It appears the location of the Tig that Varric, Hawk and Bartrand had looted all those years ago had been leaked, and humans had been seen carting red lyrium out by the handful at the Valamar entrance. The three of them go on a mission to seal off the Valamar entrance with the hopes of stopping the red lyrium from getting in the wrong hands. Once they've successfully done so, Varric makes a startling realization that it was actually Bianca who had leaked the location of the Tig. After Varric confronts her, Bianca doesn't deny it, and she reveals that she went into the ruins to study the red lyrium. Her research discovered that the red lyrium is corrupted with the blight, meaning the lyrium is actually alive, as the blight can only taint living things. During the mission, you can sense some tension between the two, and there is obviously a lot of history between them. It turns out that they were once lovers, but were forced to split by the Merchants Guild for almost starting a clan war. Bianca later went on to marry a member of a powerful smith caste, Bogdan Vaska, to cement an alliance between their two houses. Varric still reveres Bianca and describes her as the most brilliant smith you will ever meet. She also designed his crossbow, which he named after her. As you can tell so far, Varric is a decent, honourable dwarf who will stop at nothing to help the world and the ones he loves. There are a lot of things that happen in Dragon Age Inquisition that Varric is there to help you with, but I won't delve into every little thing as I'll be here all day. Let's skip ahead to the final battle. You end up facing off against Corypheus at the ruined Temple of Sacred Ashes, where he uses the ancient orb, the Orb of Destruction, to reopen the breach. He wants to step through to the Fade victorious, or destroy Phadus if he cannot rule it. Once the final battle is over and Corypheus has been defeated, Solus discovers the damaged orb and appears to be disappointed that he couldn't save it, and leaves the Inquisition without any explanation. We're almost up to the gameplay trailer for the Veilguard, and so it's only fair that I explain a little bit about Solus before continuing. You see, in the Veilguard gameplay trailer, the powerful elven mage they're trying to reach is Solus. It's revealed in the Dragon Age Inquisition DLC Trespasser that Solus is actually Fen-Harel, the elven god of betrayal or rebellion, also known as the Dread Wolf amongst other names. You may have heard that the Veilguard was going to be called Dragon Age Dreadwolf up until a couple of months ago, so if you wasn't sure what that name was in relation to, it's in relation to Solus. Not only is he Fen-Harel, but he was the one who originally created the veil between the two worlds, after which he fell into a deep slumber. When he awoke, he realised what he had done had brought about the downfall of elves. They were no longer immortal, and a lot had lost their magic. The Orb of Destruction that Corypheus had was actually the source of Solus's power, but Solus was still weak from his slumber to open it, so he gave it to Corypheus willingly to unlock it for him. Solus didn't know that Corypheus was this all-powerful magister and assumed the orb would kill him once it opened, which it obviously didn't, so Solus joined the Inquisition in the hopes of stopping Corypheus and to get the orb back in his possession. Varric didn't really get on with Solus at the beginning of Inquisition. They were two very different people with very different views on the world, but during the events of the game they became civil and perhaps good friends, with Varric even giving him the nickname of Chuckles. So when Varric finds out that Solus betrayed the Inquisition and pretty much the whole world, he wanted to be there to stop him from doing the unimaginable. The Veilguard takes place 8 years after the Trespasser DLC, so Varric and his comrades have been searching for him for a long time, and now they've finally caught up to him. Varric is adamant he can talk him down because of their history, and you can see in the gameplay trailer that Varric doesn't want to hurt Solus. He wants to stop him, wants to try and convince him to stop what he's doing, and wants his friend Chuckles back. And honestly, Solus aiming his magic at Varric's crossbow Bianca rather than at Varric himself, to me that shows there's still some good in Solus, that he still cares about the people he betrayed. At least that's what I'm hoping. After Dragon Age Inquisition and Trespasser, Varric appears in 2 more comic series, Knight Errant and The Missing. I will leave a couple of links in the description for these 2. Again, these will be affiliate links, so anything bought through these links will earn us a small commission. Thank you so much if you decide to buy anything. Now the only thing left to dissect is the Veilguard gameplay trailer, and honestly, apart from Varric going grey over the years, I think I've covered what needs to be said about this. He is desperate to help his friend in need, even if said friend is bent on destroying the world. But that's just the kind of dwarf that Varric is. He's loyal, sympathetic, and will have your back no matter what. I've heard some theories about Varric's fate in the Veilguard, and I really hope they're not true. Even though Varric will no longer be a companion, I hope he's around to help the Veilguard in their hour of need, which he will be if fate allows. Thank you so much if you got this far in the video. This is actually the first video I've done that takes a deep dive into a character, so I hope I've done Varric justice. Let me know what you thought in the comments, and I might see you in the next one.